Productivity is not about doing more. It's about getting the right things done without actually burning out. And if you are a mom juggling toddlers, a career, household chaos, maybe even uni like I am, as well as running a business, or even if you're just navigating like a busy season of life, you know how quickly fitness and health and just health practices, they're the first thing to drop. And so in this video, I'm sharing 5 productivity lessons that completely changed how I approach my health and my work. And I cannot stress this enough. These are not hacks from a book. They're the lessons that I had to learn the hard way after having my daughter, Ayana. One of them left me sick in bed for weeks. Another came straight out of ancient philosophy. And you know what? A lot of them, they go against everything these productivity gurus tell you. So stick with me, because these lessons could quite literally save you years of trial and error and help you to finally stay consistent through life's chaos. Now, if you're new here and you're kind of like, what does she know? Who is this chick? My name is Shona Virtue. I'm an ex-elite gymnast turned PT, yoga teacher, and psychology graduate. I am currently in my honors year of psychology, studying to become a sports psychologist. I also run a health and wellness online platform with over 30,000 active users. And on this platform, I have all kinds of different health and fitness programs. But because I'm doing all this, I am very much qualified to talk to you about busyness and about trying to juggle multiple things and stay calm through it. Now, even though I really do believe in the power of learning through experience, this really is the advice that I kind of wish that I had a little earlier. Much of these tips that I'm about to share are about sort of staying centered and focused while that chaos is kind of moving around you, remaining that eye of the storm. So let's get into these lessons. Lesson number 1, organization isn't enough. You actually need cognitive flexibility. Productivity gurus are not talking about this enough because they're really trying to keep you rigid. So let me just give you a little story. Before having Ayana, I really believed that if I just organized my life perfectly, like if I woke up earlier, if I trained at nighttime, if I time blocked every single hour perfectly, I would always be able to fit my training in. But the reality is that babies don't really care about your life planner. Life, it just throws curveballs, right? And when my perfectly laid out schedule fell apart, I started to feel like a failure. And part of that was inexperience of being a mum, because I do feel like as mums, we often get really used to having those things kind of get chipped away a little bit, but you still feel a little bit failure-y, right? The problem with failure is that it chips away at something called our self-efficacy. Now, if you're new here, you haven't heard me use that word before, we got to take a little detour into some psychological science, because self-efficacy is one of the biggest predictors of whether you will or will not stick to a health behavior. So self-efficacy isn't just about like having confidence. It's not just self-confidence. It's actually your belief in your ability to succeed at a very specific task. So for example, in fitness, it might be the belief that you can actually complete the workout. So when a workout's too hard for too long, like we want a workout to be challenging, but when it's like that little bit too hard, it can actually make you feel less inclined to do the workout, right? We've all been there before. You're just like, oh, it's not for me. Like I'm going to wait till I'm fitter to do that program, or I'm going to wait till I'm fitter. And so the only way to stay consistent, according to health psychology, and this has been like very rigorously tested and repeatedly found, is that the level of self-efficacy that you have, the level of belief you have in your ability to finish something, will dictate whether you even begin in the first place. And so the more experiences that you build of success, the stronger that belief becomes. The flip side of this is that when you repeatedly set yourself up for failure, right? Like giving yourself a rigid plan, particularly if that plan was the thing that you followed before pregnancy or before you had a baby, and then you're like, oh, I just want to go back to my old body, so I'm going to try and do the same thing that I did before I had the baby. Like, no, you're giving yourself this rigid plan that life keeps breaking. And so your self-efficacy, it takes this huge hit. And once that belief starts to erode, it doesn't just affect your training, it actually starts to seep into your productivity. It seeps into your confidence at work, even into the way that you approach challenges in everyday life. It contributes to this narrative of like, everything I try, I fail at. And that's why this psychological flexibility matters so much, because when you adapt instead of collapse, you give yourself these little wins. And those small wins, they start to build on your self-efficacy, which then fuels the motivation to keep going. And it's this kind of psychological snowball effect. And it's the foundation of every long-term health habit. It is the foundation of every long-term health habit. I had to say that again. So this isn't about making excuses, and it's definitely not about breaking promises that you've made to yourself, right? Because it's the point is that self-efficacy is about success in achieving something or finishing something. The flexibility doesn't mean kind of throwing the plan away and saying, oh, well, I'll just try again next time, because that kind of inconsistency again, is going to weaken that self-efficacy. But what we're really talking about is building systems to include flexibility. So systems that allow you to adapt, but still follow through. So let me give you an example. Maybe you plan to lift weights at the gym, but your toddler is kind of like homesick, right? Or your meetings ran late, they chewed into your training. A flexible system means that we've actually already got a 20-minute body weight circuit at home that we can switch to. So you're still training, you're still keeping the promise to yourself, you're just doing it in a slightly different way. Another example might be like you wanted a 60-minute run, but the sleep was terrible. So the flexible system says, okay, maybe we're going to do a 20-minute walk and we're going to listen to a podcast while we do it. So you don't abandon movement, you actually just adapt to it, but you maintain the habit. And so that way you keep racking up these little wins, yes, with minor changes, but those wins, they strengthen that self-efficacy over time, because the goal, can't stress this enough, the goal isn't perfection, right? It's consistency. And that consistency over time makes those health behaviors actually stick because we believe in ourselves. I know it just sounds wishy-washy, but it is health psychology. And this, like I said, has been rigorously tested. I think one of the reasons that this isn't in a lot of the productivity kind of guru guides is because well, a lot of them aren't psychologists, but it's also because most of these books, they're either written by men who've never had to manage the unpredictability of children or caregiving, like really. Like, I'm not saying that they don't manage it, and I'm not saying that men don't, or that like male parents aren't experiencing that unpredictability or that strain. That is definitely not what I'm saying. Respect to all fathers and caregivers, but there's just another level of responsibility that's often on the mum. At least that has been my experience, both with myself and just like my village or my community. And then there's also the other people that write these things, and they often have like entire teams kind of keeping their lives on track, right? Or they're just trying to juggle one main goal, but they're not experiencing the variability of children. Or they're outside of that like hectic child's experience, right? Like like their kids are in school and like things are a bit more consistent. So I'm coming to you from the trenches of having a toddler and doing uni, like doing a whole bunch of things. Productivity gurus aside, like I 100% will raise my hand and say that I contributed to this like lack of empathy myself, because before kids, I couldn't imagine how you couldn't just wake up earlier, just move things around, just stick to your plan. Like it just doesn't, it's like you just can't understand that. And oh my gosh, I shudder to think of the things that I said to my mum clients, like expecting, and they just kind of like handled it. Maybe they didn't tell me, maybe they were just like, okay, Shona. But life is way messier when there is the variability from other people. And even, it wasn't even Ayana, it was also like dealing with my mom and unpredictability of her illness as it got closer. And I was like, well, it's really important for me to be there for her. That's the main thing. And so I was sort of, my schedule, at least, not me, but my schedule was at the mercy of my daughter's health, my mom's health, my daughter's needs, my mom's needs, my university responsibilities, my work responsibilities, a lot. So anyway, that is why systems that include flexibility are so important. As I already said, it's not about lowering the bar and making excuses. It's about staying consistent in real life with toddlers, with deadlines, with grief, with huge life transitions. And that's really where our self-efficacy grows. It's not in the fantasy of a perfect schedule, but actually in the reality of showing up again and again, no matter the storm or what the day throws at you, right? I still time block because it keeps my brain in check. It keeps me focused on the things that I have to do if things go to plan. But I'm not mad if they don't, because we have those strategies for flexibility. Lesson number 2, big one, and you're gonna eye roll me, parents, but just stick this one out. Sleep is the most underrated productivity tool. So I thought that pushing through tiredness was like discipline. Okay, Ayana wasn't sleeping, but I forced myself to train anyway. And instead of getting stronger, I ended up actually getting sick, like really, really sick. I was in bed for weeks. My body just broke down. And then that meant that I obviously couldn't work. I couldn't do uni. I couldn't take care of my daughter properly. Like it was terrible. The worst part of this whole story is that I already know what skipping sleep does. Okay, I even did a whole podcast on something called the allostatic load and allostasis, but I'm going to give you the Cliff's Notes version. I do urge you to listen to that one. If you're that type of person that like really tries to like push through stress, or if you're going through a stressful period in your life, definitely listen to these 2 podcast episodes. Anyway, Cliff's Notes version of the allostatic load is basically, it's the wear and tear on your body that builds up when you're constantly exposed to stresses without enough recovery. And the thing that I want to stress is that a stressor is not just a deadline. It's a fight with your partner while you're trying to do this deadline, plus a workout, plus a hangover, plus a sleepless night. So it's this compounding effect. And often the things that we think of as like healthy, right, like training, are actually also still contributing to that allostatic load. So allostasis is your body's ability to achieve stability through that change, to be able to adapt and bend and recover. And when that allostatic load, it gets too high, your body really starts to break down. Your immune system weakens, that recovery slows, and your risk of illness, it just drives up. And that's what happens. I don't know if you've ever had this. I've definitely had experience with this, like where you've started a new training program and it is way too intense for what your body is currently ready for, and you actually find yourself in like week 2 or 3 of the program getting sick. It derails you, it throws you off. I know that some of you who have tried to do the Virtue Method with like going straight to the hardest variation. So just for context, in my Virtue Method follow along videos, I will give you like an easy variation, a medium, and a hard variation. And so many of you who are like super motivated to get started with your program will like jump in and go, I'm just gonna do the hardest version because that'll get me results faster, right? Not always. Often you do more than your body can handle right now, particularly if you're coming from a place of stress. And so if you don't have a good foundation in your body, that new training, even though, yes, exercise is healthy, yes, training is healthy, it is only healthy if you have the capacity to handle that stress. And so one of the most powerful ways to lower that load is actually sleep. Now, I know that if you're a parent, sleep is tricky. I very much got sick of the sleep advice as well in the early days of postpartum. So I'm going to share what Justin and I did. It may or may not work for you. You have to figure out what works. I just am not pro working out through tiredness, especially if you're a mama that is breastfeeding, because it's actually not just calories. It's not over-exercising that disrupts our milk supply. It's actually getting enough sleep in the early hours. And so maybe you've heard of the hours before midnight count double. Have you heard that? Well, anyway, it's a little bit of an oversimplification, but the truth in it is that basically when you fall asleep earlier, you catch more of the body's natural deep sleep window. So the first half of the night is when we get most of our slow wave sleep. And that's the stage where like all of that juicy magic happens, right? We get the tissue repair, the muscle growth, the immune system strengthening, memory consolidation, but also, this is one for the mamas, breastfeeding mamas, prolactin, which is key for that milk production. So when sleep is chronically disrupted or cut short, supply starts to take a hit, potentially, because your body, it isn't getting the recovery time it needs to keep everything in balance. And we put our babies to bed early, and then we often use that time, and I was doing it, to like catch up on work, or Justin and I were using it as like the time when we would just catch up together and try to like maintain our relationship and just like have dinner together and hang out and watch TV and just like do the things that we did before baby. But I took the brunt of that toll, because if you push your bedtime later and later, you actually cut that deep sleep window really short. And so you may clock 7 hours if you're lucky. I mean, probably not if you're waking up every like 2 hours. But anyway, even if you are lucky enough to get enough sleep, like you miss out on the highest quality recovery that your body needs. And when you keep your sleep aligned with your circadian rhythm, right? So when you aim to sort of go to bed when it's dark and wake up when it's closer to sunrise, then your hormones, they can work more efficiently. That's cortisol, that's melatonin, that's growth hormone, like they all follow that rhythm. And so when you're in sync, your recovery is better, your mood is better, and ultimately your productivity is going to be better the next day. Like I said, it does mean that some of your time with your partner can take a little bit of a hit, but we just started getting up earlier and having coffee together in the morning to make up for that lost time. And it's only for a season, right? It doesn't have to be like that forever. It can just be like that for a period of time. Sleep is the foundation of productivity. It fuels that focus, that recovery, and that immune function, which is everything, because there's nothing worse than getting sick and then not being able to do any of it. If you are exhausted, the most productive choice is to rest first, because training only works if there is recovery to back it up. Training is a stress. Don't forget that. Lesson number 3, sometimes you just have to walk past the mess. This is a tough one to say out loud. I used to think I had to get the house tidy, the laundry done, the admin finished before I could train. While there's some part of me that still feels that way, and I am all for having a clean and tidy house, the problem was the order in which I did it was sort of wrong. If you're waiting for the perfect conditions, then you're often going to meet a session. So I had to learn to literally walk past the mess, roll out my mat, or walk past the mess, go to the garage gym and just start. Or find ways to kind of stack habits, right? Like listening to lectures while cooking for Ayana, or I use the Speechify app to listen to psychology papers because you have to do so much reading in psychology. And so I will do that while I am doing the laundry or just tidying up around the house. And it just makes life so much easier when you can do that. Now, granted, I know you just can't do that all the time. I think that there are some things that you can do, albeit a little slower, but with baby. And I also think it's really good for them to see you cleaning or working or gardening or whatever it is, because it helps to model those behaviors that will help them later, right? It's also why I'm really big on working out around your babies, because it instills this reminder that exercise and training is a part of life. So just cleaning your teeth or washing your hands after you use the bathroom, we want them to feel the same about exercise. It's all about sort of normalizing it. I've seen a few fitness coaches online who also have babies who are like, it's unrealistic to suggest that you're always going to want to work out in front of your baby because it's actually not very productive and you want your own time. And I get that. I am so here for that. I feel the same way. The workout that I do when I'm with Ayana versus when I'm alone, very different levels of intensity, very different levels of focus and concentration. But listen, if it's between getting the workout done or not getting it done, I know what I'm picking. Also, if it's between a week of spending time with her or not spending time with her, we exercise together and we do some of the exercises sometimes together. And it's so fun and awesome. And what is this weird perspective that we have around that individuality? It's let's get a bit more collectivist about this whole child rearing thing. Anyway, sorry, this is a little side rant, but the key takeaway here is that productivity is about knowing what matters most right now in this moment. And sometimes the mess can wait, but your health can't. Sometimes the mess can wait until you have your baby with you, or you can do it alongside something else. Toys on the floor, you roll out your yoga mat anyway. Ooh, lesson number 4. I only learned this one recently, but it's a good one. Drop the panic, addiction, and the busy story. I had this huge narrative around busyness. I wore it like a badge of honor, and then I moved out of that, and then I just clung to the story. So I kind of wore it like a badge of honor when I wasn't that busy, because it helped me to feel like I was getting things done. I don't know. And then I had a baby, managed the mum stuff with the baby, and suddenly I was addicted to this panic that I was experiencing through that process. And I thought that panic was kind of giving me energy to get through the busyness, but in reality, it was actually just taking away from it. And it had a lot to do with the narratives around busyness that I was telling myself. And this is where an ancient philosophy comes into play. There is a line from a philosophy book called the Tao Te Ching. It's written by Lao Tzu. And this line really sort of struck me, as many of the lines did. There's genius and wisdom in every single chapter of this book. But it is in nature, nothing hurries, and yet everything is accomplished. And so if you've never come across Taoism before, or the Tao, basically the Tao is about flow. It's about balance and alignment and the way things naturally move. And that is completely different to the story that I was telling myself. Our narratives, they dictate our behaviors. And if you're constantly telling yourself, I don't have time, or I'm too busy to stop and appreciate life outside work, you're actually starting to reinforce that story. And over time, it creates what researchers call time poverty. This is basically a chronic feeling of never having enough hours in the day. And the thing about time poverty is that it's not just a mindset problem that causes a little bit of stress. And it's like, well, if it's all in my head, then I should just get over it. It's actually been linked to poorer health outcomes, like physiologically, higher stress, and even like much lower life satisfaction. I did a whole podcast episode on this that you must listen to, because once you understand how your narratives about time shape your reality, you can then start to rewrite them, and you can rewrite that story, which helps you to change the behavior. And that's when productivity actually feels productive, right? It stops being panic and it actually starts being flow. You do need systems, and that's why we're going to come to lesson number 5. Build systems, not just goals. So I really used to lean into the idea that productivity was about willpower, like pushing harder, grinding, never missing a beat, just being more effective minute after minute. But the truth is that our willpower, it really does fade. So what keeps you consistent are systems. Now, some people will talk about this idea of decision fatigue, which is the idea that you only have like a limited number of decisions that you can make in a day. But the science on that is actually a bit shaky, and it's not as solid as many people think. However, the part of that is true is that when your brain is juggling too many open loops, when you don't know what you're supposed to be doing next, it can create this kind of cognitive load that makes absolutely everything feel harder. And on those days when you're already tired, that extra cognitive load means that you're way more likely to follow your mood instead of your plan. And that is why a system, a program, is so valuable. Because when you have a plan, you don't waste time deciding what to do. You don't have to make all these emotional decisions about it. You just show up and you get it done. Sometimes while you still have, I sometimes feel like mood is like different versions of yourself kind of sitting with you. So it's like there's the you, and then there's this experience of like emotions in different personalities. Not different personalities, like split personality, but you know what I mean? There's like these sort of feelings where it's, if you think of it like that, you realize that you are not your mood. There's a separation. So sometimes we have to just get it done in the presence of grumpy Shona, in the presence of sad Shona, in the presence of like super distracted Shona. That's fine. You do it in a flexible way, just like we talked about. Now, if you're not following a program, a training program right now, you need to check out the Virtue Method programs on my website. I've already talked about them a little bit, but even if you're not sure exactly what your body needs right now, like whether it's flexibility or strength or working out in a gym or working out at home, there's a quiz on my website that you can do that will just help you to find the right program that suits your goals and the circumstances that you're currently living in, because our environment dictates health behaviors too massively. And if you don't have the means for a program right now, that is totally okay. What I'm going to say to that is please pick 4 workouts that you are going to stick to for 4 weeks. So you can do that from my Daily 10 channel or even from this channel here, but I want you to stick to those workouts for 4 weeks because you need that consistency to build the physiological progress and of course, that self-efficacy progress too. So here's my big takeaway. Productivity isn't about doing or squeezing in more. It's actually about aligning your energy, your habits, and your systems so that you can stay consistent in your health while also staying consistent with your work and your life. Now, if even one of these lessons landed for you, hit subscribe because I share psychology-backed fitness strategies to help you thrive through busy seasons and busy, intense emotional transitions too. Now, I know I've just monologued at you for like the last however long, but this community is categorically not just about me. I learned so much from you guys, whether it's something you share with me in a DM or a comment about your experience. Either way, you guys have perspective that I don't. So tell me, what was the best productivity-based technique that you applied and that worked? And then what's one that didn't? Or maybe that was like different for you after a baby, or when you were in a new role at work, or maybe while navigating grief, like something that didn't work that everyone talks about. Drop it in the comments. Let's help each other to learn and grow and just share our experiences. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you soon, friends. I can't wait.